Working with color in Photoshop is not as hard or as sophisticated as something like Adobe Illustrator, but you do still have some great color tools that you can work with. In this basic tutorial video, we're going to go over how to sample colors from the actual images to create a document that looks color coordinated or is brand specific colors. So for this particular assignment that I created for my on-campus classes, you can see that I have a couple of logos, and when it comes to a brand, they are very picky. You have to use the colors that they have already set out. So with this particular assignment, students are supposed to sample the color from the logo and then figure out what the color's CMYK values are, RGB, and the hexadecimal colors. CMYK because that could be used for printing, RGB because that could be used for digital items, and then hexadecimal code can also be used for digital items. Now, most of the time these brands are probably using Pantone colors because they're kind of unique. They're way more specific or unique than CMYK, but they are more expensive. So for the purposes of talking about color here, we're just going to focus on CMYK, RGB, and hexadecimal colors. So if I zoom in here, one of the great things about Photoshop is it tries to keep things really handy for you. The color when you're working in Photoshop is here on the toolbar, and this first color, the top front square, this is your foreground color, and then the one behind it is your background color. If you need to go to the default colors, which are black and white, then you can click this little button here. Now, if you want to flip these colors so that white is your foreground, you can use this switch color as well. Now, when I hover over each of these, you can see that in the tooltip, there's the letter D or the letter X. When I hit the letter X, I'm going to flip between them. And if I change colors and I have a different foreground and maybe a different background, and if I hit D, it's going to bring it back to my default colors. So now what we need to do is we need to specifically pick colors. Now, if I double click on one of these, I can see my color picker, and this is where I can move my picker around, and this is my current color, and I can compare it to whatever I'm choosing here. And if I want to, let's say, move up to blue, then I can move this slider here. This is basically the hue version of the color picker. So we're picking based on the hue color. If you'd rather pick based on saturation, so we see highly saturated and then less saturated, or if you'd rather pick based on brightness, so we have super bright and then we have darker, you can definitely do that. But most of the time we're going to work with the Hue Color Picker. So I can choose my colors here, and then I can double click the background, and let's say I want to choose a color here. Now that's great if I was creating my own document. However, I specifically need these colors for these brands. So I have these squares that are just waiting for color. I've already done the kind of pinkish red that's in Toys R Us. So I can come down here and choose the next square. And what I can do with that is I don't just have to try to guess what this orange is. If I move my mouse out, it turns into a little sampler, a little eyedrop, and that's going to sample the color, the pixel that's directly at the bottom of that eyedrop. So if I click it, all of a sudden I'm in the orange that's a part of the Toys R Us logo, and I have the RGB 244, 128, and 32, and then I have the CMYK 1, 61, 100, and 0, and this is the hexadecimal color. So that's where I can come in and type all that information here. So let's see that one more time. I can double click this color 3, choose the next color in the logo, and then I have the hexadecimal color, which I can copy. And with my text tool, come in here and click in this text box. Oops, and that should have been the hexadecimal color. So we'll come here and paste that. And again, I can double click here and see that it's 116, 187, 69, 116, 187, and 69. So then I can have those specific colors. And those are great because if I want to tell somebody, hey, my logo is this specific color, I could tell them light green, dark green, lime green, and they're never going to know specifically. Somebody's lime green might be different than what you imagine lime green is. So it's important that you give them the hexadecimal or the RGB or the CMYK value so that you're both on the same page in terms of color. So that color picker tool is also really good when you're working for something like this. So let's say this was an invitation to an actual golf invitational. Well, sometimes people struggle with color and they don't know what colors they should maybe put here, but they know that they wouldn't do white because it just looks kind of empty and boring. So what you can do is, again, I can go ahead and choose a solid color fill layer and I can try to play around with colors. But again, I can pick colors directly, sample it directly from the picture itself. And truly, whatever color I pick is going to work and coordinate with this picture. So that's the beauty of using this tool, except for black. Black was kind of weird. But any color that I pick from here is going to work with this invitation. Now, you don't always have to have the color picker up. You can actually have the eyedropper tool, and this is going to change your foreground and your background color. So I can click here, and as you can see, if I click and hold, it's going to sample as I move my mouse around, and that's going to put it into the foreground color. So I can hit X so I can replace the pink color, and let's say I want to do one of these golden colors, and now I have a foreground and background color that are sampled directly from the photo. So that's the basics of working with color in terms of using the color picker and sampling colors from a document, whether it's something like a vector graphic like a logo, or sampling directly from a photograph itself. Or if you just want to do custom colors, you just have to double click on the foreground and background color. Or you can actually use this color palette up here. I know I'm showing you a lot of different ways because that's the thing with Photoshop. You can do the same thing like 5 or 6 different ways. You just got to figure out which way works for you. So if you come up here, you have the foreground and the background, and now we have our RGB slider. So if you want to change it so it's has a little bit more of an orange hue or a red hue, or you can kind of do a quick color picker here without necessarily having to double click in here and choose colors this way.